One poet challenged artists to fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. Hi, I'm Julie Faithan Balzer, and today on Make It Artsy, plain paper will communicate art and emotions in the hands of our makers. First up is artist Roxanne Coble, and she's creating mini canvases with tissue paper.
That's right. And I mean, tissue paper is such a great tool to use to kind of like sneak attack your viewers into thinking that you did a lot more work than you actually did. So if you look at my little mini canvases over here, it looks like I've put tons and tons of layers of stuff, when in reality, it's probably only like 3 layers of paper. So to kick things off, I start with a little miniature canvas, and these are tiny. We're talking
I like the idea of using a miniature canvas because it just takes all the pressure off of making something like precious and special, and it's just a cute little something.
It's less intimidating, it's fun to work with, you know, it's a good way, again, using up those kind of like leftover supplies, little scrappies that you might have.
Now, when you're adding collage to this, are you thinking of anything in particular? Are you picking particular pieces of paper?
Absolutely. So for this particular kind of mini canvas idea, I'm pulling ephemera that is of the same color family. So you can tell that I'm picking kind of greens and yellows for this particular one. And I'm putting down a little bit of gel medium right onto my canvas and then sealing it on top with a bit more.
Yeah, and I noticed you're using a lot of magazine pages, and the nice thing about that is sometimes like an ad or something will have many, many, many colors, and you just rip off the little piece that you need.
Exactly, and you can see this is like a bit of sky from something, or who knows where it came from, but I'm still sticking with kind of that yellow and greens and kind of blue shades here, which you can see as we move on to this kind of next part here where I have everything adhered down. They're roughly in the same sort of color family. So I have kind of blues and purples happening here. I have pinks and maybe the like little pops of those chartreusey, limey colors, and then I have these kind of like orange and pinks happening here.
And I find it fascinating, of course, how things like the eye pop out, or some of the text becomes really graphic and interesting, and patterns maybe that you didn't notice suddenly become incredibly prominent.
Exactly, and it's really important to pick things like this with this particular project because we're going to be laying tissue paper on top. So you want bright, bold, graphic things.
And that's because for people who've never worked with tissue paper, what happens when you collage it?
Well, there's going to be a little bit of transparency peeking through. So you're going to be able to see all that really yummy goodness peeking through from underneath. So what I'm doing is just kind of cutting out 2 pieces here, and I'm doing them in 2 different sizes. You can see one is a little bit longer, and I'm just going to tear my bottom here just for a little bit of a different effect. And then one I'll do a little bit shorter from the top. And the key to this is thinking of working from the top down. So I have my larger piece that I'll adhere down, and then my smaller piece right on top. So I'm getting different layers, different looks happening.
So it's different kinds of opacity, because if you think about the fact that the tissue paper is going to go slightly, you know, translucent, then what that means is that where you only have one layer, so for instance, I can actually really, really see that eye through there now, but I can tell, or I'm gonna guess, that when you put that second layer on.
That's a pretty good guess there, Julie, because it is going to cover up a bit more than that first layer. Something else you can see that I'm using here too is that I'm using really awesome tissue paper that has bits of gold in it.
I was going to say, is this something that came like wrapped around dresses, so you're actually like upcycling, or did you actually buy this?
No, some of it is upcycled. You can see some of this tissue paper is a little bit more loved than some of the others. So yeah, you can definitely save.
But I think it's those wrinkles in the tissue, that love, that actually really makes it even more interesting, because not only do you have this really cool little gold flecks, you also have these big,
look at the
huge dots, which are amazing. They're fantastic. And this is actually a great tip too, which I love, which is you just use a little rock to hold your tissue paper so that it's totally fine.
Exactly, exactly. So once my tissue paper is dry, I can now kind of come in with some heavy-bodied white paint to create some interesting pattern, because it's really going to pop. And you can see that in my samples.
Why does it need to be heavy-bodied?
Because it's nice and opaque, and it's going to stand out, and almost kind of has a sticker feel to it. And especially once it's dry, it's going to be a really fun kind of interesting detail that you can kind of fill in with doodles and lines and stuff when you get to kind of our next step.
And I like how you're taking advantage basically of the size of the brush that you're using, because I know you were using a smaller brush before, now you switched to a bigger brush so that it's really filling up that space.
Exactly, and you can see it's really bold, so it's going to pop a lot. And that white, there's something about using the white too against those colors that it just looks really fun. You know, it just brings it up just a different notch here. So these are my samples now here that I have my paint in, I got the tissue paper in there, I have my heavy-bodied white paint pattern. It looks like I've done a lot.
It does, and you know what's fascinating? It's like, I know that there's like some exposed collage and some covered tissue paper in 2 different layers, but I can't really tell, and my eye is jumping around, and I'm excited because it just looks so deep and interesting.
And that's the cool abstract part of it. Abstract art can be very intimidating, and in just looking at it in this way of simple layering, busting out that secret tissue, technique, you can really create some kind of interesting look here.
And I love how some of the pen work you're doing is you're tracing the paint blobs.
Yes, so it's really making it pop, almost making it look like it's its own layer, really, and essentially.
And also making things look really purposeful that may have been accidental. I think of it kind of like finding a shape in a cloud or something like that. It's really exciting and cool.
Yeah.
So you're just going to continue then, I assume, to add little details like that. And if we look over, I mean, you have a gel pen in your hand right now.
Yep.
So you can add black, you can add white, you can add different colors, whatever it is.
Tiny little dots, tiny little dashes, anything that's going to be really fun and detailed and yummy.
Now, if we look over your art journal, is this the same techniques that we've been doing that you've been using on this larger spread?
It is. So if you can see underneath kind of the illustrated elephant that I have going on here, it actually is that layering of bright colored ephemera underneath and then the tissue paper on top.